just jump right in. Actually, I'm gonna run through the slides a little bit faster because I want to spend the majority of the time on the demo. And this is a little bit about what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about entitlements management and access reviews. And I'm also going to talk about lifecycle workflows, which Travis kind of implied, that they exist, but we're actually going to go right into it. And finally, we're going to talk about PIM, which is probably the one that most people are familiar with, but there are some new features. There's a new feature in preview right now where PIM actually integrates with conditional access, which is something that we have been waiting for and had been requested by a lot of our partners and customers. So looking forward to, and there's even also integration, a new integration with entitlements management and verified ID, which I'm not going to go into verified ID. Travis will later on, but you'll get to see some of that integration during this session too. All right, so if you've never actually worked with identity governance, this is like a 10,000 foot view of what it is. I think it's seen partially as security, but partially as compliance, but it's also about employee productivity, I think. Because it really allows organizations to ensure that the right people have the right access to the right resources and at the right time. And it's not just employees. This goes for employees, for partners, for vendors, and also across services and applications. And this is for both on-prem and on cloud services. It's really intended to help organizations address these four key questions, which is which users should have access to which resources, what are they doing with that access, and are there any controls for managing the access, and can auditors verify the controls are actually working, which is the piece that I think relates to compliance. So that's the kind of the overview of what IGA is. Now we're going to go into each of these areas. And I think identity governance to me is really proactive or preventative security. I think that if you do a lot of these things right, you're actually going to prevent a lot of issues at the end of the day. I also see this area as an area of expected growth within identity, mostly because many organizations are now in the process of upgrading older IGA solutions that were likely antiquated. And so they're upgrading to new technology, and they're also having new requirements to deal with as well as they transition. So I see this shift to cloud-based IGA really finally accelerating. So that's really a huge opportunity for our partners to help their customers be able to do that. Okay, so as we work to transform organizations using the zero trust model, we're really working on the three key principles that I think we've tattooed into your brains by now. So we're doing explicit verification with the assumption that every element of the system can be breached. And in the middle here, I kind of highlighted the third principle, which is using least privilege, because that's really the principle that is at the core of identity governance. So we're making sure that users have the access that they need only for the time that they need it. And many times we only think about these principles only on the context of authentication and authorization, but the reality is that good identity governance is really required prior to getting to that point. And like I said, I want to run through these kind of fast because I want to get to the demo. But at its core, again, making sure that the right people have the right access and only for the time that they need it. And I have actually worked with organizations that hundreds of users as members of administrators groups. I'm sure you've probably come across the same. And some of them have been there for years. And in some cases, service accounts that no longer were in use and still had admin privileges. So that's what lack of identity governance does to an organization. And to an attacker, these are openings. These are opportunities for lateral movement. So I think sometimes organizations don't even know what they have or who has access. I also found an organization that had guests like over 300 guests. This is a large organization, over 300 guests, some that have been there for 4 years, and nobody knew why they were still in the system. So this is where identity governance can truly help and make a difference. And this is, I kind of took this diagram, if you've seen it, I kind of, modified it a little bit to show everything. And it's probably oversimplified of the joiners, movers, leavers process, but you can see the important parts here. And there are really two life cycles here. There's the identity life cycle here, which is, the user getting hired, promotions, resignations, user termination. And then there is the access life cycle, which is as they move here, they get access to different resources that they should get, removes whatever they don't need anymore and add whatever they now need. And like Charles was telling you about, we have in Azure AD, we have skin connectors. And that's usually used to provision users from a source of truth, which can be an HR system like Workday, SAP SuccessFactors, or even a bridge solution like Aquera that actually connects to a wide variety of HR applications. And then the identity governance services are going to be used to create identities on target applications and services, as well as assign the required roles within those applications. And I'll show you a little bit during the demo on how you do this. And those permissions might be security groups, it might be team groups, it might be SaaS applications like Salesforce, ServiceNow, or AWS, GCP. It can be specific SharePoint sites too. It could be a variety of applications. And then as the employee moves to different departments with different responsibilities, their access to those target applications should really be adjusted, right? So they no longer need sysadmin profile in Salesforce. Maybe they need a new role, they need read-only access, then that old profile should be removed and the new one should be assigned. And ideally, this should all be done automatically. So that's where some of our features that you're going to see a little bit later, like the lifecycle workflows, come into play. And granted, it is still in preview, but I think there's so much potential, and I'll show you where I see that potential as I go through the demo. All right, so I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna move through the slides so I can get to the demo. If I can get the slide to move, there we go. All right, so that's where entitlement management comes in. It really is going to allow those organizations to protect, to monitor, and to audit access to those critical assets. Specifically, it will help with the to specific scenarios like ensure that only authorized users have access based on policies. It's going to provide employees and guest users with workflows so that they can request the access that they didn't get automatically. It's also going to establish regular access reviews to validate if that access is still needed. And it's going to establish also effective controls with time-limited access, especially for those privileged roles. And to do this, Entitlements Management has access packages, which are essentially, they're just a bundle of all the resources, everything that is required for someone to be able to do a specific job. And then there's also a concept of connected organizations, which is basically going to allow users access from other tenants, and that uses B2B, so that those users can request access packages of resources on the home tenant. It's really also a great way to set expiration on the access automatically, so that those external users that no longer linger around, because once the access package that they had access to has expired, you can set it up to automatically remove those users, which is really a great feature to keep. So once you get it cleaned up, keep it clean. And finally, there's the concept of catalogs. So access packages exist within catalogs. And this is great because it allows the admins to assign specific owners to those catalogs so they can delegate access management of those resources to users that really have a much better idea of who can and who should have access to that. And again, I'll show you all of how all of this works during the demo. Let's see, hold on. So, and then access reviews. And access reviews are typically included in any good identity governance process. Honestly, this should be the bare minimum that you're going to get. And some of our competitors will call access reviews IGA, but it isn't just IGA, it's just one of the options within IGA. And in this process, a reviewer who's typically like a line of business owner for those privileges, they're going to review the users that are assigned to either, and then they're going to decide either approve or deny the access going forward. And then the privileges, you can set them up to be automatically removed if those users that are denied in the process. And in some scenarios, you can also set the reviewers to review themselves and to attest whether they still need that access. I've actually seen that requirement for organizations that need to meet FedRAMP requirements or have FedRAMP compliance requirements. They use that feature because that's one of the requirements that they have. This is a just a sample of how the process works, and this was something that I created, so it might not be the best, but it's just gonna, once you create the access reviews, the reviewer is actually gonna receive an email notification, or if they log in, they're gonna be able to see it, just like I'm gonna show you in the demo. And then they're gonna make a decision, and technically they have 3 options. I'm only showing approved or denied, but they're gonna have a different option, which is don't know, and I'll explain in a minute how that works. But once the if they don't make a decision, if they don't choose any of them, they're gonna get reminders kind of at the halfway point of the review. And then there's going to be a review period. And once that review period ends, you can set it up so that if they're denied, that role or group or assignment permission is going to be removed automatically. But if they're approved, then it'll remove. And you can set up different actions depending on what you want to happen automatically, or if you want it to happen automatically, you might not choose to do it. You might want somebody to review it before and apply. But those are some of the options that you're going to see. All right. So we have access packages. And like I said, access packages exist within catalogs. So I have 2 catalogs here, and you'll see the access packages that are here are both within the IT catalog. I'm actually going to create a brand new one so you can see. I'm not going to keep it, but or maybe I will. But just so you can see the options. So I'm choosing to create it within the IT catalog. And that's going to give me some certain options because I can configure things like different resources for different catalogs, or I can configure different automation for different catalogs here. And I can even create a new one too. And then from here, I'm going to select the various groups, and by default it's going to give me the ones that are part of this catalog, but if I wanted to see more, I could extend it here. And I'm going to select these, and then I'm actually going to close this here so we can make some space. And we can do the same thing with applications. Now, the great thing about applications, I'm going to select Salesforce, ServiceNow, all of these. But the great thing about this is that I'm not just, and it's not just for the applications, but for the applications, it really makes life so much easier, because not only can you select the access that I have to the application, but you can actually select the specific role. And if I wanted to add another one, so maybe I want AWS EC2, but then I also want AWS Guard Duty full access. So I can add the specific roles, and some of them I have some default ones, and some of them I actually have, like in this Salesforce one, I have some specific profiles there. And the same thing with connection admin, with ServiceNow. And even with the groups, like this is Microsoft 365 team, I can choose, the specific roles. Is it just going to be a member? Is it going to be an owner? So having that ability, this is huge for me. I think it's because a lot of the times, and especially our competitors, are having solutions there that don't allow you to do role. They all want you to do through mapping through like group memberships in Azure in Active Directory, not even in Azure Active Directory, but like in Active Directory. So when this, and that can cause, if you've been in identity for a while, you probably know horror stories from having users being members of too many groups. So this is app specific. So it's role. It's not just a membership to a group, especially when it comes to like applications. It's also a lot more secure. And then the last one that you can do is SharePoint sites. So you can add, again, SharePoint sites, and again, choose the whether they're members or whether they're just, in this case, maybe owners or visitors, whatever the case might be. And so this little package is the permissions that these users, maybe it's the SOC team, and they need, maybe the permissions make no sense here, but just a specific team, and they know that no matter who joins this team, they're always going to need this type of access. So this is like a bare minimum that they should have as a package. And you can make these packages and that they can request, or and actually you can make certain packages that and have different rules for internal users versus external users, because what I'm going to set up here is the initial policy, but keep in mind that I can choose this policy for internal users and then create another policy for external users. And by policy, I mean the approvals that they're going to have to go through and the rules that they're going to have to abide by. So in here, I'm going to say all users, all members, and I'm going to exclude guests on this one. And then I'm going to require approval, and I can have up to 3 stages of approval. So you can have first approver, manager, and then maybe line of business, and maybe security team wants to approve some of them too. You can have that in the setup. Another one, and actually I'm going to choose that one as approver, and then and then you can also have how long do they have to make a decision, and if they don't make that decision within a certain amount of time, then do you want to send it to an alternate approver? And then you can choose that. I'm not going to do that for this one. And then let's see. I'm going to, I set this one just to 1 just to make it easier, but I'm going to, you can do 2 or 3. And then this is one of the, this enable new requests, meaning, somebody else can request it. Required verified ID. This is one of the newest features that has been added recently. And so you have the option within, and I actually have verified ID set up on this tenant. So I actually get some, this is the verified, it has to be a verified domain, but yeah, see, only issuers a verified domain. So my domain is verified, and so that's why I see options. In my case, I have one for verified employee, so I can select this. And what that does is that before a user can request this package, they're going to have to prove that they are a verified employee. And I'll show you what this looks like when they're requesting it. And for verified ID, wait a little bit, because that's the topic that Travis is going to cover a little later in detail. I'm just showing you the integration with the access package. Okay. And then you can also have questions. So you can say what project are, or project name or whatever you're working on. And then you can have either short text, multiple choice, or long text. So I have, and it's going to give me an error until I actually put some values in here. Red, oops, language, English, and red, and blue, and English, and the value is blue. And you can continue on putting additional, and you can add additional questions. Like I said, you have different formats, and you can mark them as required or not required. And then attributes. So some of the applications, in this case, ServiceNow is one of those applications, they're going to require a specific attribute to be completed. or filled in so that because in some of these, like ServiceNow is one of them, the user, when they provision to ServiceNow, they're going to have to be created in ServiceNow if they don't exist already. So you have, if there is, and then I just picked one as an example to show you that you can do that. But if it's a different attribute, you can just configure the specific application with the specific attribute that is needed. So then it'll be, that's the information that will be requested when the end users are requesting this package. And then you have a lifecycle. And this is actually going to meet a lot of the compliance requirements for many. And also, like I said, it's just good. It's a good way to keep things clean. It's preventative security. So these users can have this access, and I can set it for 90 days. And then after that, they can, it'll expire. And then if I set this here, then they'll be able to extend or request an extension, and whether I need approval or not to grant that extension. And I can also set up access reviews through here. And I'm going to cover access reviews in a minute, so I'm just going to skip it. But it's access reviews for the entire package. And I'll cover them. You're going to see access reviews in 3 different places. You're going to see them through access packages. You're going to see them through PIM, a Privileged Identity Management for the privilege roles. And you're going to see them on their own for, which is what I'm going to cover next. And on their own, they're for groups and for applications. And then you also get this custom extension, which is another feature that is in a preview. And what this does is you can say, I want, and what it is a logic app. If you're familiar with logic apps, it's just, I'm going to trigger some logic app. And I thought I had some in here. Maybe I'm using that, but I mean, maybe I had to pick this here first. So maybe when the assignment is granted, it's still not showing. Okay, well, I haven't set up any custom extensions, but you can set up a logic app. This is set up through the catalog, actually. So if when the assignment is granted, then this logic app will run automatically. And you can do that for all these various different stages, when it's created, when it's granted, when it's removed, and this will run automatically. And that's the, I just wanted to show you the options here. Now these, I can actually see from here that I have one pending request and I have an active assignment too. So that means it's been assigned to somebody. I'm going to show you just the catalogs real fast. Within the catalog, this is where you set up those custom extensions. That is starting in a few weeks. Administrator will no longer be allowed to manage catalogs and access packages. Please transition to Identity Governance. So there's a new role called Identity Governance Administrator that was introduced, so you no longer can use the user admin role, which is a good thing because it's more granular. So these are the custom extensions. I think I'm using this one with another package. That's probably why I couldn't add it. But this is just a logic app that you can configure to run. And if you're familiar with logic apps, the sky's the limit. You can do all sorts of things. And then you can, another thing that you can, these are the resources that are associated with its catalog, but you saw that I can add them kind of on the go. And the other issue here is that you can actually delegate permission. So I'm logged in as a kind of a super admin in here, but I can delegate access to, I can put a catalog owner, like let's say if I'm creating a security catalog, and so I can delegate access to maybe the manager, the director of that area, so that they can manage the types of permissions that their users are going to need, and they can create their own packages, access packages, to have their users request them or to be assigned automatically to them. So this is a good way to do that, to delegate to the people that actually need it. This was the connected organizations piece where I told you that I can, when I create these access packages, I can actually create, and I'm going to show you here, for users not in my directory. When I choose this, I actually get to pick the selected organization. I have a connected organization, which is my personal tenant called PowerPuff. So I could create access packages that are only available to that tenant to request, which is a really great way to isolate permissions to only specific people can request them. So that's where you set up those connected organizations. And you can actually, while I'm here, I'm going to show you, you can remove external users automatically. And like if they no longer have permissions, and this is number of days before removing the external user. So after the permissions expire, the access packages expire, 30, they're going to put into, I think it's logging disabled. And then for 30 days, they'll remove like that, remain like that. And 30 days after, if nobody makes any changes, then they'll be removed completely from your directory, which is a really great way to automatically keep external users that don't need to be in there. It used to be part of Azure AD, and now it's really its own solution. And for anyone that has been competing in the area of IGA, it's probably great news. And this is the scenario that we're targeting. We're trying to make that joiners, movers, leavers process or cycle easier to manage so that users can get that access to do their job, without delay, and also removed as soon as they no longer need it. So the joiner would be obviously when the employee first joins the company, mover when they're changing jobs, and leaver when they're terminated. And this is really how it works. So when the user is provisioned into Azure AD, once the Lifecycle Workflows that detects the new employee, and I'm going to show you how those triggers work, or how you configure those triggers. It'll trigger specific workflows that you have set up based on a set of values. So if you have a workflow for an employee that joins like a SOC team that we were talking about earlier, they can automatically be added to a certain group, and maybe that group is actually going to grant them access to data or they need, or access to applications that they need, however you have configured that, right? And then there's also logic gaps, again, that you can trigger through this. And then once they're no longer part of the SOC team, then that access can be removed automatically. And these are some of the various templates these are the initial templates that have been, that are currently available. We can trigger these tasks based on rules, such as attributes that are updated, like department value. So I'm going to show you how some of these workflows you can not only trigger based on the date that they're hired or the date that they're going to be terminated, or a specific amount of time between there, but you can also trigger them based on the department that they're joining, or you can do a combination too. You'll see. And I'll also show you during the demo the various templates that are currently available, which actually continues to grow and will continue to grow. You see that there are some areas that that they're coming, but they're not quite there yet. But you can also, besides working with those templates, you can also track the various versions of the workflow. So as they are updated and modified, because sometimes you need that data for compliance requirements by your auditors. And then you can also customize the workflows. You can add several types of tasks, including logic apps, which are very much like those custom task extensions that I was showing you about in the access packages. Okay. All right, so access reviews. You saw some of the access reviews within access packages that I didn't go into it, but there are some access reviews that are available, that are can be created on their own, and those are access reviews for Teams groups or for applications. And you can select the specific group that you're going. You can do all of them if you wanted to, or you can select a specific group. And there's actually technically another option, but within these, see how this is all guests. This is a group that I created, which is actually a dynamic group. And so the way that I did this was so that I could remove my guests automatically using access reviews. And this is just another option, but you could just, create the specific or select the specific group that you're going to review, or the application. And you can select to review all users, or if you just want to review guest users, you can do that too. This was an option that is also added so that only inactive users are selected. I'm not going to check that because I want to review everybody. And then you have the option to do multi-stages. You can do actually up to 3 stages, 1, 2, and 3. So you can do maybe, this is where you can do the self review. Maybe you can do first stage, first review, and then you'll give them like, I don't know, 7 days to go and review themselves, maybe a little more, depending on how often you do it. And then you can select maybe the manager and maybe some specific group select the users or group, and then you have to select the specific group that does the review. And then in here, you can set up the. By the way, you can set up who moves to the next stage here. So if you have different stages, you can set, is it the approved reviewees that move to the next stage? Is it all of them? Is it the don't know? And this was actually a feature that we requested working with one of our partners because they had specific requirements for their auditors. Their auditor didn't want anybody to make it to the last stage that had chosen don't know. So they intercepted themselves in one of these stages. And then they only moved the ones that say don't know to that next stage so that they could make a decision yay or nay. So because at the end of the day, they couldn't present to their auditors either. They could only present an approve or deny, not a don't know. So that's a really nice option to have in there. And then you can set your recurrence quarterly, semi-annually, annually, whatever you're doing. And I didn't choose all of these, so I'm actually going to choose just one stage so that I can move to the next settings. And so this is where you set the whether you want to auto apply. And also if reviewers don't respond, you can say remove access automatically. And that's a little bit harsh, but I've actually used that before because it was the only way to keep people paying attention to these end users paying attention to these reviews. It would actually remove access automatically if nobody said it was approved. And then you can also send a notification. This is actually going to provide recommendations on the reviews, and I'm going to show you what those look like from the end user in a minute. And so if there's no sign in within 30 days, it's going to say no. It's probably going to recommend deny because if the user isn't even logging in, then why should they even need access? And then you can also, and this is new, where user to group affiliation is one other one that is going to be used to make recommendations to either approve or deny. And then justification, email notifications, reminders are sent at the midpoint, yeah. And then a little message to the reviewers to, hey, please review this. And I'm actually going to show you from, first I'm going to show you here. This is where you go to my access. And if you're going to request an access package, you would see the ones that are available to you. If you had any active, you would see them here. Lydia doesn't have any. I think I had to. Okay. So this one over here, let's see if I'm going to request this one. There was one that okay. So this one was asking some questions. Remember those questions that we filled in? I would have to pick a project and I would have to, well, in here it defaults to my country because I already have it. But if I didn't have it, I would be able to fill it in. If I wanted to request it for a specific amount of time, I could, or some justification, and then I can request access. And this might move, depending through the stages that I have set up, it might move to somebody else to approve. Then this request, this is the other one where I actually showed the verified ID. So remember how I requested that the person that would request this would need to present a verified employee ID? So this is how it would show. Before they can even request it, they would need to prove that they are a verified employee. And like I said, this is something that verifiable credentials is a topic that Travis is going to cover in a little bit, but you actually get to see integration with some of our features already showing up here. And then access reviews. I don't think she has any access reviews. No. Okay. So I'm going to show you a different user, and I think I have some here, right here. All right. So I actually have request history, oh, here, approvals. So these are access reviews. Oh no, these are, yeah, this is actually access that, this is the access that Lydia just requested, by the way. So I can review the access in the details in here and then make a decision to approve or deny her access. I'm gonna go ahead and say approve. Yes, and submit. But this is what the approver would see. And then this is the access review that I had submitted. And the way that and by the way, you can have a group of people reviewing access and they would see all the same screen. So in fact, I can select all of them and approve them and say, put some note in it. And when the next person logs in to review the night vision access people, they would see whether I approved or denied it. And what happens is the last decision that is made when this period, the access review period ends, that's the one that stays. So you know, if you were denied and I put it to automatically remove you, then it'll remove you automatically once that period ends. So if you see in here, this one doesn't end until March 22nd. So people can come and go and make decisions up until March 22nd and update those decisions. And it could be different people making the revision. And then I can manually go back to, as an admin, I can actually go back to this review and see the current review, the results for the current review. So I can see that somebody has approved them. It was me, but I could see that. And I could actually stop it manually. So I could stop the current stage or I could stop the whole thing and then apply it from then on. I have 2 stages here. So if I stop this one, it'll just go into the next stage. But you can manually do that too when it comes. And in here, you can see the history of it. So any, and I think this one doesn't really have any because I just created this one recently. But if you had any, like I'm going to show you the guest access review one, you can actually see that it does have some history of when it was first created. This was my way, like I said, of keeping external users away. And I have I still have some, so every month it runs and it gives me to review the users that are external still in my tenant. Okay, and all right, so now I go to Lifecycle Workflows, which was the one right here. It's so big that I don't know where I am because it's zoomed in a bit. Okay, so let's see. So Lifecycle Workflows. First of all, I can create workflows here. By the way, you see that I have my workflow schedule set to every 3 hours. I can modify that. So I can run it as close, I think as little as every 1 hour and as much as 24 hours. I'm not going to change that, but I could change that how often. I think the default is 3 hours. So if you don't set it, it's going to be 3 hours. And you can create workflows and I'm going to just run real fast. These are some of the templates that are available. Some of them are for joiner, leaver. Some of them are on demand, which means you can actually select it. If you mark it to be, you can actually select it and manually run it from the portal here. I'm going to select, like, I'm just going to see what details this one has. Yeah, okay, so this one has a few things in here. So I'm going to select this one. And this is offboarding task for an employee. And the trigger, some of these triggers you can change, some of them you cannot. And some of them you can change, especially for onboarding. You can say how many days from the event and you can modify that. You can add, remember how I told you that you could trigger this? This one's set to marketing, it's just the default one, but you can modify that to department, being security operations center or whatever department they're going to be. And then there's other properties too. So you can even do a combination of expressions. So it could be maybe everybody that is for SOC team out of the US gets this package, or everybody that is SOC team and employee type is level 3 or whatever, then they get this other package. So you can do combinations like that, or this permissions, not package. And then you can add tasks. So these are the tasks that come by default with this template, but you can add additional tasks. So that one had, what did it have? Disable user, remove user from all groups, remove users from all teams. But you can have, and there's more here, but the one that I was going to show you is this one, run a custom task extension. Those are logic apps. So basically, once you select that, you have to select the actual logic app that is going to run. And so these are the two that I have: remove user storage and create directory for team members. Just two that I created on this specific tenant. But you can select the specific logic app that is going to run, and they're referred to as custom extensions here. And then you just create the package. And like I said, you can, some of them you can run on demand if you mark that to be, and then you can, or you can leave it on to run on the schedule, which is every 3 hours. So this is all very, very new. If you have feedback on this, if you want to see features added to this, I highly suggest that you update the feedback. I think it's feedback.azure.com if I'm not mistaken, because the teams really do look at that feedback for all sorts of information and what they should be working on and ideas and things like that. Integration of PIM with conditional access, like I was saying earlier. So how does it work? So I think PIM is one of those services where it really doesn't take a whole lot of effort to configure initially, especially for like Azure AD roles, but it makes a huge difference in security posture of the customer. PIM allows you to do just-in-time access for Azure AD roles, for Azure RBAC roles, which are like resource level roles, as well as Azure groups with privileged roles, which is another feature that is on preview right now. But you can also require approvals or justification or MFA to activate a specific role. And then now with the addition of conditional access, you can say something like, I want, and I'll show you how this is configured, but you could say maybe Exchange admins can only activate their role if they're coming from a compliant device and they have used passwordless authentication, phishing resistant authentication. So you can do things like that now with that integration, which is really neat. And you can also trigger alerts when the roles are activated. Every time in my tenant, my personal tenant, every time GA is activated, I get an email. And I also get an email every 7 days too, with like a little summary of who has activated what, and if there's any permissions that have been assigned that are permanent, which is what you don't want to happen, right? So some of the key capabilities, it really allows organizations to manage risk because it enforces least privilege access and just-in-time access, and it also reduces security risks that are related to privilege access by enforcing MFA, for example, for elevation of privileges. It also addresses compliance. It tracks when the person activates the just-in-time access, there's that, all of that can go into a report, and you can see which users activated, when they activated it, what their justification was. If you're requiring like a ticket number, it'll show that in there too in the audits. And you can also view and receive those notifications. Actually, the users that get those notifications, I think, are security admins and global admins by default, and you can set up additional ones to get them too. And that's every week, and it'll let you know what was activated, like a little summary of what went out in regards to PIM. And you can also regularly audit and remove unwanted privilege roles. So this is the third area where you're going to see access reviews. within PIM. They work very, very similar way, but it's a separate area for them for now. So the way it works, users are going to be assigned a role as either eligible or active instead of permanent, because that's what we're trying to prevent. And then active assignments are meant for users that are really using that role day to day for their day-to-day responsibility. So they don't need to activate the role, but they can still have a specific expiration. So for example, a role that will expire in 6 months, but the user can then request an extension for that role if they still need it. And then the eligible assignments, which is actually this is where that activation comes in place, right? When they're assigned as eligible. And they can, and through the activation, you can configure it so that that it will require, like I said, MFA or specific requirements before they can actually activate it. You can even require them to be what was I thinking? Oh, you can even require them to be approved also before they can even activate. And you can also include this in access reviews. And so let me actually just jump into the demo. You can see all three types of privileged identity management that you can do. I tell partners to go here. Where is it? Assignments. Export. Yeah, right here. So if you go to, is it in here? Roles. You can export here. This is the best way to start, I think. You can, you're basically going to get a report of every, let me see if I can open it here so you can see this. This is the best thing to, and this one is actually clean because this is my, personal tenant, so it's not a whole lot going on here. But you can still see that there's just a ton of permanent assignments. None of these privilege roles should be assigned permanent. In real corporations, you're going to see a humongous list of permanent assignments probably for some of these. But this is your to-do list, for as a partner, you come in, this is where you start working. These are the roles that you're going to have to start modifying first. So if I have so that following the next assignments of these roles can be restricted. So I think I modified some of these. So let's start with security administrator. So the way that I would start is start with the ones that have been assigned, and then go in and you're going to put in some guardrails, basically. You're going to say, so like this role, and I'm going to edit so you can see, this role can only be activated for whatever amount of hours I wanted to activate. And then in this case, this is where this conditional access integration comes into place. See, I can request on activation require MFA, but I can also require a specific policy. And I have a few authentication context policies. And so this is one of those. And I'm going to show you that policy here. Yeah, my naming is very specific because I don't remember what I did. But this is my authentication context policy. And the way that I do that is that I come here into Cloud Apps or Actions and I select authentication context. And then whatever, and I created these authentication contexts, so that's why it gives me these options. So they're pre-created within the conditional access. And all it is I'm naming it something. I had to give it a name. So in this case, it's going to be trusted device and strong authentication. And so the grants that I requested here is that it's going to grant access if it has passwordless MFA and if it has, and the device has to be marked as compliant. So that's my authentication policy. In my case, I target it to specific users just because I don't want to create problems for other types of testing. But the way that when I come into the settings for these roles, then that allows me to specify what is that when these users are assigned as eligible and they activate it, what is it that is going to be required for them to activate that role? And in this case, I also have required justification, and I could mark a ticket number, but I haven't. And I could even do approvals too, like I said. This case, I am not, because I wanted to show you this failing in a minute. And this is the very first thing that you're going to come. Most of them are going to be by default. This box is going to be checked. Allow permanent eligible assignment. That's the first thing that I would uncheck. Uncheck that, because this is what is going to prevent anyone from assigning these roles as in a permanent way in the future. So by doing that, anybody that gets assigned this, it's going further, from now on, then they're going to have some kind of expiry for that assignment. And this is where you would set up those notifications. These are specific to this role, though. Just keep that in mind. And so once you start doing this, you can then start reassigning people. Anybody that has been assigned that is permanent, you can update them. And so I could take Lee, for example, and see from now on, it doesn't. This was assigned prior to me unchecking that box, so I can't assign it anymore. So now I have to set a I need to set a specific when the assignment is going to end, and it has to be within the guardrails that I set up on that other on the settings area. So from now on, this person is not going to have it active all the time or permanently assigned to them. It'll still be active, but it won't be permanently assigned to them. See, now it has an end time, and they're going to have to extend it if they actually need the access. And the same thing would go for any new eligible assignments. They're going to have, this was permanent before. If I update it now, because I unchecked that box, now I have to have some kind of a date when this ends. So let's see. So I am going to show you from, and actually I'm going to show you first this, and then I'll come back to show you the other ones. I'm going to show you from the end user point of view. And let me make sure that I have, which user did I do? I have to remember. It's Lydia. Oh yeah, Lydia. All right, so it's Lydia. And I'm going to show you. Okay, so this is Lydia. She's been assigned this Intune one. So there were different options, right? When I was assigning these permissions. So I used different features. So this one for Intune doesn't require approval. So when I activate this one, all I need is a ticket system, and maybe Snow 1, 2, 3. And some reason. And so when I click on activate, it's going to go through the process without requiring any approvals. And it's actually going to activate it, because that's the way that I set it up. And you can determine, the levels of approvals that you're going to need, or what you're going to need to trigger prior to setting this all up. But this is actually going to activate it. And it takes a minute or two, but it's going to do it automatically. Yeah. For me without any approvals. Now this other one is actually going to relog me in because it just activated, which is actually nice because then it takes effect immediately. The Teams one is when I activate it, this one is actually going to, and by the way, I can actually schedule this. This is a really nice feature, especially if you're working on a weekend and nobody's going to be around to approve your permissions. Maybe I can set it up for Saturday to start the 8 hours, and I'll put some kind of reason. When I activate this one, it's actually going to submit a request, because this one I set it up so that approvals are required before activation. So this one's going to be, I'm going to have to wait for somebody to actually approve it for me. So now it's pending the approval. And then this third one here, it was the one that I requested. I had the authentication. I required passwordless MFA, which I'm using for Lydia, but it also required a compliant device. So when I try to validation. So it says the conditional access policy is enabled and may require. So I had to click in here to continue. And now it's saying try signing in another way, because one of the features that I requested was the compliant device, which it isn't, because this is my work computer, so it's not compliant with this tenant. So that's why it's not letting me activate that unless I go in through the through a compliant device. So that's a really neat new feature that is available too. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the other ones because I haven't covered groups or resources, but maybe I'll just show you from here. So this it's probably easier to show you from here. So I have, oops, so here. I only showed you Azure AD roles, but you can, I'm going to go through resources first. You can do the same thing for resource level. So like if you have Sentinel, for example, and you have a subscription and you want to set up PIM for like, Logic Apps contributor or for Sentinel contributor, so that so you can put certain checks in place before they can activate those roles. You can do the same thing. So you just have to activate it, and it works the exact same way as with the roles are just, subscription level roles or resource level roles. And you can set them up. Oops, I can type Microsoft Sentinel contributor, for example. I can do the same thing, set up those settings according to whatever I need them to do. And so the users that are assigned to them would then be bound by those restrictions, those guardrails that I put in place. And then the last option that is available is for groups. So you can have, it used to be that you could only do it for groups that are assigned roles, but now you can do it for all types of groups. So you can see, actually, you can see some of these assignments here for this group. These users have been assigned the group as active, but I can again update it, change the settings, and then remove the permanent, and then just do it based on the guardrails that I want to set up going forward. But to me, PIM is like one of those things that if you're going to start with anything in IGA, start with PIM. Because it's one of the ones that is going to give you the most bang for your buck, and it's really going to be able to have you show some real improvement in the security of your customer. And I think that was all I had for IGA, which